Hello, we are back to go ahead and disassemble this Nokia 900. See, it's a little bit beat up, a couple scratches on it. Really what we're going to do is just tear this down so you can see what it'd be like to basically take out the logic board, replace it, or replace the screen, front-facing camera, any of the internal parts, possibly the battery swap would be helpful as well. One of the tools we're going to use is this metal spudger. We need a Torx T5 and a small Phillips screwdriver, a dental pick, and a couple of guitar picks to help open the case, possibly an iSesamo metal tool. The first thing that we're going to go ahead and do is remove the SIM card slot. You can use a SIM opening tool or a pin of some sort to pop this out. Next thing we're going to do is just remove this little plastic covering over this hole here and set this aside. And this will give us access to the pin that holds the screen in place. Now using the SIM opening tool, tweezers, or some sort of an opening tool, you're going to go ahead and put your tool inside of this hole and pry upwards on the pin. There's a little hole in the end of the pin that you can put your tool into to help pull it out. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And that'll go ahead and unlock the front of the phone. We can start using our pry tools. We stick it in right here in the middle. The pry tool, it'll give you a little bit of leverage to go ahead and open the screen. Sliding it up and down, go ahead and pop the screen open. We're going to go ahead and fold it open a little bit like a book, and then pull. A little wiggle here to help loosen it, and then slide it to this side, and that'll allow us to open the device. Now it's easier to hold the device in your hand, kind of like a taco, and undo some of the screws here to help loosen this before we start completely disassembling or trying to undo any cables here. We have 3 Phillips head screwdrivers, 2 at the upper right hand side and 1 at the bottom left. They are denoted by little plus signs next to them to show that Phillips screws are here. So it'll make the reassembly process a little bit easier. Go ahead and just set these 3 screws aside. Perfect, now we're using our Torx wrench. We're going to go ahead and remove all the internal screws here. Anything that's holding into this metal plate that's on top of the phone, all the screws need to be removed for this so it can be removed out of the device. It can be a little bit tricky, just make sure you don't strip them out. Just go nice and slow. That'll help you remove them. There's a few in here, just a couple more to go. Just this one in the bottom right hand corner. Now there's a little clip right here on the left hand side of the device. If you push this in, it'll help pop up this metal plate. Sometimes there's a little extra adhesive that's on top of the battery that's holding it down. You may need to use a pry tool to kind of pull this up just a little bit. And this might be put onto the battery fairly well. So you may want to be a little bit gentle as you remove it from the device. There's another little connector that's holding it down here in the other corner right here. So we're going to push that in and then pull this piece towards the right hand side. I'm going to go ahead and lift up. It does have clips that run down the right hand side of the phone, so pull it upwards and then out. You can see the gray adhesive here that was holding that back plate on. The next thing we're going to go ahead and do is undo this battery connector. I'm just going to use a plastic pry tool or a nylon pick to go ahead and remove this from the phone. Same tool you use to remove the screen, you can use that as well. Just prying upwards, and I'll go ahead and remove that battery. We're going to remove these two flex cables here, and that'll let us release the screen. We can go ahead and just set that aside. Give us a little bit more access to the interior of the phone. Alright, so the next thing we're going to go ahead and do is try to remove the battery out of the interior of this phone. It does have some adhesive that runs down the right hand side of the battery. At the very top, bottom, and then in the middle of the device. Sometimes these batteries can be very easy to remove. Sometimes they're a little bit trickier. You can use a metal pry tool or a nylon pry tool to pry this up. Now the battery, actually, the metal casing on it splits right in the middle, so you want to be careful as you try to pry this up that you get all the way underneath the casing in the bottom of the phone. I find it fairly easy to pry from the top and bottom side of the battery, as the casing doesn't split here and it's easier to get a good grip on it. Just going to put our pry tool here and wiggle it around, kind of move it from all sides. The goal is to get that adhesive prepped and starting to come up. It might take a few seconds to get that started. And the really tricky ones, you can use a little bit of heat, just either from a hairdryer or a heat gun on the back of the device. So I switched to a metal spudger pry tool, see if I can get a little bit better grip underneath it. I don't want to damage the battery because I do want to reuse this. Just pushing it in on the top and then pulling up, getting a little bit of separation. This phone has some really good battery adhesive on it, geez. Try with a pick so I can get just a little bit better hook under this corner here. Just does not want to come out. Definitely don't pull on the ribbon cable too hard. We don't want the cable to rip off of the battery. It can be a little bit delicate. Just trying to wiggle it a little bit at the base to see if the battery is making any progress. Just moving out of the way so I can get a good grip on the bottom of the battery here. Well, since it's not playing fair, I'm going to use a little bit of heat. Use my hot air gun here. We don't want to get it extremely hot to melt, but we definitely want to get it nice and warm to the touch. That is a pretty thick plastic casing, so you do need to give it some time to kind of set in and move through the casing. Give it a few seconds. I'm always cautious about putting heat directly onto batteries. Although the interior of this phone does get fairly warm, so I can't imagine it'd be the end of the world, but I would always be safe than sorry. We're going to use our straight spudger here so we can get some better leverage. Making a little bit better progress. Now we got a little bit of heat on it. We'll go ahead and just slide the spudger between this corner here and see if we can't loosen that tape up. It's going to pull upwards. Now you want to be very careful if you're putting a tool behind the battery like this. There's a ribbon cable that runs down the back of this phone that's right underneath this that goes to the volume and the camera and the power buttons. So if you feel resistance, you might want to pull it back and then pull up a little bit and push it back in. See, this thing is really stuck in here. Looks like the metal housing on the right hand side is actually pressing against the bezel or the interior portion of the frame, which is why it's being so difficult. Had a little bit of a grommet pop out there just for the mic at the bottom. So making sure I get all the way behind the battery case. There we go. Went ahead and popped out for us. So there's this ribbon cable right here. I did nick it just a little bit. I didn't cut it or scratch it of any sort. So what we're going to do is, here's the metal tape or the black tape you can see on the back of it. Is I'm just going to straighten this little ribbon cable connector back off. Go ahead and pull it off the motherboard here. We have a grommet up here at the top. It goes on top of the earpiece speaker. Let's remove that real fast. There's a little clip right here that holds this logic board down. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. You may need to use two pry tools to get it open. So it's pushing against the clip, and that should help release the motherboard for us. Use two pry tools, just one underneath and then one on the clip, giving you a little bit more leverage when I pull the clip back for the board to release. Perfect, there we go. So we're going to lift up from the bottom and then kind of wiggle it free from the top. There's a couple grommets at the top that hold the device in. Alright, so I have the board out, and here is the housing. You see that the rear-facing camera is soldered to the motherboard there. I'm just going to go ahead and just flatten this cable back out before we go too much further. Connects to the few buttons on there. And that's just disassembly out of the housing. The next portion of this video, we're just going to be working with the logic board here. The goal of this is, I'm actually going to change the charging port on this. So we need to remove a couple pieces off of the device. We're going to go ahead and pull the front-facing camera off. Just a little clip. And it has some foam tape underneath it. I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. And normally it's pretty hard not to rip the foam tape if you're removing it. You can use a little bit of heat to help separate it. Normally, you can just re-glue it back to the existing tape that's on there. It's not the end of the world. We're just going to try to gently pry it off to make sure that it doesn't rip in any funny direction. See if we can get it as flat as possible. Being nice and gentle as we pry it away. We can go ahead and set that camera aside. There's a little bit of a rubber grommet on here that looks like it should come off. Don't stress about removing it completely. But this little cap covers the charge ports that holds in the earpiece speaker. Just using a little pry tool and pulling upwards. We can go ahead and separate this from the logic board as well. Sometimes this is a little sticky on here, so we're just going to help pry it off the back of the kind of the mic cover here. Slowly separate it from the device. We definitely don't want to rip it. Just pulling it forward nice and slowly. Perfect. Now, if that removed, we can go ahead and set it aside. If you're replacing just an earpiece speaker, let's just pop out of that housing. You can put your new earpiece speaker in. That's the disassembly of this Nokia 900. If you have any questions, throw them up in the comments. I'll definitely do my best to get back on those. If you want to watch the reassembly video, it'll be in the details or description of this video. Feel free to click that link and we'll show you the reassembly of this Nokia 900. As always, thanks for watching.